Did forgotten desires echo through damp stone halls? What secret hopes did trembling hands etch onto parchment, facing the eternal darkness between the 5th and 15th centuries? The final whispers of a life, captured in ink, can speak louder than any battle cry. Number 10. The Last Bequest of St. Francis of Assisi. The year is 1226, and the air in Assisi, Italy, hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and late autumn leaves. Inside the humble hut, by the little church of Santa Maria degli Angeli, a man lies weak, his eyes reflecting a deep peace despite the suffering that grips his frail body. This is Francis the Pavarello, who stripped himself of worldly goods to embrace a life of absolute poverty and devotion. He is dying. His followers, the friars minor, gather around, their faces etched with grief and veneration. They know this moment is sacred, the passing of a true saint. Francis, despite his physical decline, still possesses a clarity of mind that startles those present. He has spent his life preaching a gospel of love, peace, and humility. Now, in his final hours, he wishes to leave them more than just words spoken in sermons. He desires to leave them a testament, a final instruction, a spiritual will to guide their path, long after his voice falls silent. He dictates, his voice soft, sometimes faltering, but firm in its conviction. Brother Elias, his vicar, perhaps struggles to hold back tears as he records the sacred words. The document known simply as the Testament of St. Francis is not a will, in the traditional sense, dividing lands or treasures. Francis owns nothing. His only possessions are his threadbare habit, a staff, and the boundless love he holds for God and all creation. Instead, his testament is a spiritual legacy, a heartfelt plea to his brothers to remain true to the original spirit of their order. He speaks of the early days, the profound simplicity, the joy of begging for alms, and the humble work they undertook with their own hands. He recalls the time when the Lord himself led him among lepers, and he felt a profound shift in his heart, turning bitterness into sweetness. This was the foundation of his transformation, the radical empathy that defined his life. He emphasizes the importance of manual labor, not for gain, but as a way to avoid idleness and to maintain a spirit of humility. And when we were unable to receive the reward for our work, he dictates, we had recourse to the table of the Lord, begging alms from door to door. This was not shame, but liberation, an embrace of dependence on divine providence. Francis expresses a deep reverence for the clergy. Even those who may have personal failings, because of their sacred role in consecrating the body and blood of the Lord, he insists that his brothers show them all honor. This instruction reveals his profound respect for the Church and its sacraments, even as he pushed for a radical renewal within it. His voice grows stronger as he speaks of the rule itself, the very framework of their lives. He forbids any gloss or interpretation that would dilute the simplicity and purity of the original message. Let no one, he implores, presume to give a gloss on the rule or on this testament. He wants his brothers to live literally by the words, without seeking dispensations or compromises that would soften the rigorous path of poverty they had chosen. This reflects his fear that after his death, the order might stray from its foundational principles, becoming more institutionalized, less radical. He then speaks of their churches and dwellings. He insists that they remain simple, built in a way that reflects their poverty. And if anyone should steal fire from a man and cook stones, he should be punished with more than bread and water. This rather striking metaphor bursts his vehement opposition to any grandeur or material accumulation. They are to live as pilgrims and strangers in the world, owning nothing, reliant only on God's grace and the charity of others. The testament ends with a blessing, a final outpouring of love and hope for those who would follow his path. he blesses all his friars, present and future, who shall observe these things, and persevere in them to the end. He asks them to love one another, to live in charity and patience, and to always praise God. His words are not those of a dying man clinging to power or wealth, but of a spiritual father pouring out his heart to his children, urging them to walk the narrow, liberating path they had discovered together. As the last words are recorded, a profound silence falls over the small gathering. Francis has given them his greatest gift, not gold or jewels, but a blueprint for a life lived in authentic faith. His testament is a testament to radical love, unwavering humility, and a steadfast devotion to the simple, butchy message of the gospel. It is a document born of deep suffering and profound joy, a final touching embrace from a man who loved the world and all its creatures with an intensity few have ever known. His instructions, though centuries old, still resonate with a raw, powerful honesty, a call to strip away everything but what truly matters. This humble scroll, penned by flickering candlelight, became a beacon for generations, a testament to the enduring power of a life lived in radical faith and boundless love. Number 9. The Parting Wishes of William Marshall. It is April 1219, and the greatest knight of his age, William Marshall, lies on his deathbed at his manor of Saversham in Berkshire, England. The air is thick with the scent of herbs and sickness, the low murmurs of priests and concerned family members filling the chamber. William, now in his early 70s, has lived a life that would become the stuff of legends. From a penniless younger son, he rose to become regent of England, serving 4 kings and becoming a paragon of chivalry and loyalty. He has faced down kings, led armies, and seen more battles than most men could count. But now his final battle is against the inevitable. Around his bed stand his children, including his eldest son William, who will inherit his vast estates and titles. There are also his loyal retainers, men who have ridden with him through thick and thin, who have witnessed his prowess and his wisdom. He is a man accustomed to command, and even in his weakening state his voice carries authority and a quiet dignity. He knows his time is short, and he is determined to set his affairs in order, not just for his family, but for his soul and his legacy. His will, or rather his deathbed instructions, reflect the man he was, a master of practical affairs, deeply pious, and fiercely loyal to those he loved. He begins by addressing his eldest son, William. He passes on the weighty responsibility of the regency of England, ensuring the young King Henry III, still a minor, is protected and the kingdom is stable. This is not just a passing of a title, but a solemn trust, a burden of duty that William Marshall has carried with immense integrity. He emphasizes the importance of good governance and loyalty to the crown. Then, he turns to his personal affairs, his gaze sweeping over his assembled children. He makes specific provisions for his wife, Isabel de Clare, a woman of immense wealth and noble lineage herself, whom he married late in life. Their union had brought him the earldom of Pembroke and vast lands in Ireland and Wales. He ensures her comfort and security, reflecting the deep respect and affection they shared. He knows the world can be harsh for a widow, even a powerful one, and he wants to shield her as best he can. His bequests to his other children are precise, revealing his intimate knowledge of their needs and his desire for their prosperity. His numerous sons and daughters, each a testament to his long and productive life, receive lands, revenues, and specified sums of money. This was not just about distribution of wealth. It was about securing their futures, ensuring they maintained their proper stations, and avoiding disputes after his passing. He instructs them to live in harmony, a common plea from a dying patriarch who has seen too much strife in the world. But perhaps the most touching aspects of William Marshall's final wishes concern his soul and his retainers. He had throughout his life been a devout man. Even if his knightly profession often put him in morally ambiguous situations, he now seeks to make peace with God. He instructs that his debts be paid, and he makes generous donations to churches and monasteries. He sets aside funds for masses to be said for his soul, an act of faith common in the medieval period, seeking divine mercy and a smoother passage into the afterlife. His chronicler, who later composed the Histoire de Guillaume le Maréchal, records a particularly poignant scene. William, weakened as he is, expresses a desire to become a Knight Templar. This was a common practice for aging warriors to take the vows of a military order on their deathbed, a final act of devotion and a symbolic shedding of worldly sin. His Templar cloak is brought to him, and he insists on wearing it, despite his failing strength. He embraces this final transformation, a warrior becoming a monk, dedicating his last moments to God. He calls for his most loyal knight, John Durley, a man who had served him faithfully for many years. To John, William gives not just money, but perhaps his most precious possession, his sword. This was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of his identity, his valor, and the life he had lived. Passing it to John was an act of profound trust and affection, a recognition of loyal service that went beyond mere feudal obligation. It was a transfer of honor, a final salute to a man who had stood by him through triumphs and hardships. He also instructs that any who felt he had wronged them during his long and tumultuous life should be compensated. This gesture of repentance, of seeking to right any unacknowledged wrongs, speaks volumes about his character. It shows a man who, even at the precipice of eternity, was concerned with justice and reconciliation, not just for his own soul, but for the peace of those he might have inadvertently harmed. As he gives his final instructions, his voice growing fainter, his family and retainers listen intently. They are witnessing not just the end of a life, but the closing chapter of an era. William Marshall, the flower of chivalry, is passing. His deathbed scene, recorded by his chronicler, becomes a testament to his enduring character. Pragmatic, pious, deeply loyal, and ultimately a man who faced his end with the same courage and honor that had defined his extraordinary life. His final bequests were not just a division of property, but a final act of love and duty, a powerful, touching legacy. Number 8. The tender provisions of Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. The years 1204, and the venerable Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine, at the remarkable age of 82, lies in the Abbey of Fontefraud, her final resting place. She has seen more of life than perhaps any woman of her century. 2 marriages to 2 kings, Henry II of England and Louis VII of France, crusades, rebellions, long years of imprisonment, and the birth of 10 children, including 2 kings of England, Richard the Lionheart and John. Her life has been a tapestry of power, passion, and profound loss. Now her extraordinary journey is drawing to a close. Despite her age and the weariness of her body, Eleanor's mind remains as sharp as ever. She has been preparing for this moment not with fear, but with the practical foresight that characterized her entire life. She knows the importance of leaving her affairs in order, both for her soul and for the peace and prosperity of her surviving family, particularly her youngest and now reigning son, King John, whose reign is proving deeply troubled. Her will, dictated over several sessions and recorded by trusted scribes, is a document that reveals much about her character, her deep piety, her enduring love for her children, even the difficult ones, and her fierce determination to protect her legacy. She had, for much of her life, wielded immense political power, often from behind the scenes, shaping the destinies of kingdoms. Now her power is personal, a final act of control over her own narrative. First, Eleanor makes extensive provisions for her spiritual well-being. She bequeaths generous sums to churches, monasteries, and religious orders across her vast territories in France and England. Fontefraud Abbey, where she chose to be buried alongside her husband Henry II and her beloved son Richard, receives particular favor. She ensures that masses will be said for her soul for eternity, a common practice in medieval wills, but for Eleanor, it is more than just custom. It reflects a lifetime of faith, albeit one often tested by the brutal realities of power. Her piety was personal and profound, a counterbalance to the turbulent political world she inhabited then. She turns to her children. Only 2 of her 10 children survive her. King John of England and Queen Joan of Sicily. Though Joan had died in 1199, Eleanor's will might have reflected provisions made earlier, or continued charitable acts in her name. Her relationship with John had been complex, marked by both love and political friction. Yet, her will shows her maternal concern. She leaves him specific bequests, perhaps not of immense wealth, as he was king, but of cherished personal items that might remind him of her love and wisdom. She makes provisions for dower lands and revenues for her daughters-in-law, ensuring their security and continuing alliances, a shrewd political move even from her deathbed. One of the most touching aspects of her will is her concern for her grandchildren, especially those orphaned or those who might be vulnerable. She makes specific bequests to them, ensuring they have sufficient funds for their upbringing, their education, and their eventual marriages. This reveals a grandmother's tender heart, a woman who, despite her formidable public persona, deeply valued family connections. She was keenly aware of the precariousness of life in the Middle Ages and sought to provide stability for her descendants. Eleanor also remembers her loyal household. Her chamberlains, her ladies-in-waiting, her cooks, and her squires all receive specific sums of money or goods. This was not just a formality. It was an act of recognition for years of devoted service. In an era where loyal service was paramount, her generosity to her household staff would have been deeply appreciated and remembered. It speaks to her personal relationships, demonstrating that even a queen of such grand stature did not forget the individuals who served her daily. These were the people who saw her at her most vulnerable, who shared her triumphs and her sorrows. Her will includes instructions for her burial. She had chosen Fontefraud years earlier, a powerful demonstration of her desire to rest, with Henry and Richard forming a final symbolic family unit in death. She specifies the details of her tomb, perhaps ensuring it reflects her dignity but also her humility before God. There is no mention of grand displays, but rather a quiet, dignified interment. Perhaps the most poignant aspect of Eleanor's will is what it implies rather than explicitly states. It reflects her life's journey, a reconciliation with her tumultuous past. The strength and resilience that defined her, the wisdom she accumulated over decades of experience, are all present in the careful planning and thoughtful provisions. It is a document of peace, a woman at the end of a long, full life seeking to leave the world in a state of order, both spiritually and practically. As her final instructions were recorded, the scribes and family members present would have felt the immense weight of history in the room. This was not just a will. It was the final act of a woman who had shaped the destiny of 2 powerful nations, a matriarch closing her extraordinary story. Her tender provisions, rooted in both pragmatic necessity and genuine affection, serve as a moving testament to her enduring power and her surprising humanity. A deeply personal farewell from one of history's most influential queens. Number 7. The Royal Admonitions of Louis IX of France. The year is 1270. Far from the grand castles of France, King Louis IX, known to history as Saint Louis, lies dying in Tunis, North Africa. The heat is oppressive, and sickness, likely dysentery, has gripped his army and now his body. He is on his second crusade, a venture driven by profound piety, but now culminating in tragedy. Around him, his loyal knights and devastated family members weep. Among them is his beloved eldest son, Philip, who will soon inherit the throne. Louis, though weakened, maintains a serene composure, his deep faith shining through the haze of fever. Louis IX was not just a king. He was considered a living saint, renowned for his justice, his charity, his unwavering piety, and his genuine concern for the welfare of his people. He had administered justice under an oak tree, founded hospitals, and championed the poor. Now he wishes to leave his son not just a kingdom, but a spiritual and moral legacy, a blueprint for righteous rule. His final instructions, famously known as the enseignements, teachings or admonitions, to Philip, are a testament to his deep love for his son and his profound belief in the moral responsibilities of a king. This document, recorded meticulously, is not a traditional will distributing property, for the kingdom itself is Philip's by right. Instead, it is a spiritual will, a father's heartfelt counsel to his heir, designed to guide him through the immense challenges of kingship and the pitfalls of earthly power. It is a touching blend of paternal affection, saintly wisdom, and practical advice. Louis begins with a profound plea for his son to love God above all else. He tells Philip to put his heart entirely on God, to avoid anything that displeases God, and to live in His grace. He emphasizes the importance of keeping God's commandments, especially in public office. This is not mere religious platitude. For Louis, the legitimate exercise of power stemmed directly from divine will, and a king's primary duty was to serve God and thus his people. He warns Philip against mortal sin, against pride and avarice, advising him to confess frequently and receive communion with reverence. He then turns to justice, a theme that defined his own reign. Louis urges Philip to be just to all his subjects, rich and poor, native and foreigner. He stresses the importance of hearing the complaints of the poor and oppressed, of acting without bias, and of upholding the law. If there be any dispute between a rich man and a poor, Louis counsels, sustain the poor man rather than the rich until you know the truth. This radical instruction reflects his unwavering commitment to social justice and his concern for the most vulnerable in society, a stark contrast to the often brutal realities of medieval feudalism. Louis advises Philip on the appointment of officials, urging him to choose men who are wise, upright, and loyal, who fear God and love justice. He warns against favoritism and corruption, knowing full well the temptations that power brings. He wants his son to be surrounded by good counselors, not flatterers. He also touches upon the use of royal revenue. Louis urges Philip to use his wealth for the good of his people, to build churches, to relieve the poor, and to support the common good. Not for personal extravagance or vanity. He reminds him that he is a steward of God's gifts, not an owner. This teaching girs Louis' own exemplary life of charity and self-sacrifice. Perhaps one of the most poignant parts of his admonitions is his instruction for Philip to love his people. Louis explains that a king's greatest strength lies in the love of his subjects. He advises Philip to be a good shepherd to his flock, to protect them from oppression, and to work tirelessly for their peace and prosperity. This deep empathy for his people, a hallmark of Louis's reign, shines brightly in his final words. He understands that true power comes not from force, but from the trust and affection of those he rules. He also warns Philip against war, unless it is absolutely necessary for the defense of the kingdom or the faith. He emphasizes seeking peace and reconciliation, a reflection of his own attempts at mediating European conflicts and his profound desire for Christian unity. The ensignments conclude with a tender blessing. Louise reminds Philip of his own example, urging him to learn from his father's life and to pray for his soul. He offers a loving farewell, a father's embrace from beyond the grave. The document is not just a list of instructions. It is a profound expression of paternal love, a desire to impart the wisdom accumulated over a lifetime of pious rule. As the king breathes his last in the African heat, his words, faithfully recorded, become a beacon for his son and for all future French monarchs. His final admonitions are a deeply touching testament to his character. A king who sought to live by divine law, a father who longed for his son to rule with justice and compassion, and a man who dedicated his life to serving God and humanity. His farewell was not of material wealth, but of spiritual and moral guidance, a gift far more precious than any earthly crown. Number 6. The legacy of Robert the Bruce, King of Scots. It is June 1329. In the manor of Cardross, on the Firth of Clyde, Scotland, King Robert I, known universally as Robert the Bruce, lies in the final grip of an illness, likely leprosy or a similar debilitating ailment. He is in his mid-50s, but the hardships of a life spent fighting for Scotland's independence have taken a heavy toll. He has secured Scotland's freedom from English domination, a triumph sealed at Bannockburn, but the struggle has consumed his body and his spirit. Around him, his loyal companions and family are gathered, heavy-hearted. Robert the Bruce is not just a king. He is a national hero, a symbol of Scottish defiance and resilience. He has faced excommunication, betrayal, defeat, and ultimate victory. Now, as his life ebbs away, he is concerned with the future of his beloved kingdom and perhaps more deeply with the salvation of his own soul. His will, dictated in these final precious hours, is a deeply touching document, full of pragmatism, piety, and an astonishing final request. First and foremost, Robert addresses the future of Scotland. His heir, David II, is still a young child, and the kingdom, though independent, remains precarious. He appoints loyal regents, entrusting the governance of Scotland to those he believes will best protect its hard-won freedom. He stresses the importance of unity among the Scottish nobles, knowing that internal divisions have historically weakened the nation. He advises them to continue to defend Scotland against any English incursions, a stark reminder of the long, bloody struggle they have endured. This was not just a political instruction. It was a father's plea for his legacy to endure, for his people to remain free then. His focus turns to his personal, spiritual state. Despite his triumphs, Robert had a troubled conscience regarding certain past actions, most notably his involvement in the killing of John Comyn in the church in Dumfries, an act that had led to his excommunication. He expresses profound repentance for his sins and makes generous bequests to various churches and monasteries across Scotland. He sets aside funds for masses to be said for his soul, hoping for divine forgiveness and a smooth passage into the afterlife. This was a king, a warrior, making a personal reckoning with his God, laying bare his hopes for redemption. But it is his most famous and poignant request that truly elevates his will to the realm of the deeply touching. Robert the Bruce had long yearned to go on a crusade to the Holy Land, a common aspiration for medieval Christian rulers, but his lifetime of warfare for Scotland's independence had prevented him from fulfilling this vow. Now, on his deathbed, he knows he will never see Jerusalem. He calls for his most loyal friend and knight, Sir James Douglas, known as the Black Douglas, a man who had fought alongside him through countless battles. With tears in his eyes, Robert extracts a solemn promise from Douglas. "When I am dead," he whispers, "and you have taken the heart from my body, you will carry it to the Holy Land and fulfill the vow that I could not. He asks Douglas to bear his heart to the Holy Sepulchre, a symbolic crusade, a final act of devotion to God that he could not complete in life. This deeply personal request, made by a dying king to his most trusted companion, is an extraordinary expression of faith, regret, and friendship. It is an acknowledgement of a lifelong dream unfulfilled, but given a path to completion through the loyalty of another. He makes provisions for his personal household, for his loyal servants, and for his close companions. These were the people who had endured hardship with him, who had seen him not just as a king, but as a man. His bequests to them are acts of gratitude, ensuring their security and showing his appreciation for their unwavering loyalty throughout his tumultuous reign. He remembers specific individuals, offering them small tokens or sums of money, a personal touch from a king who, despite his grand achievements, never lost his connection to the common man. His will also includes instructions for his burial. He wishes to be interred at Dunfermline Abbey, the traditional burial place of Scottish monarchs. He gives specific details about the arrangements, ensuring his body, though not his heart, would rest among his ancestors, as his final words are spoken, and Sir James Douglas solemnly vows to fulfill the sacred trust of carrying his heart. A profound sense of sadness and reverence fills the room. Robert the Bruce, the liberator of Scotland, is making his final journey. His will is a testament to a life defined by extraordinary struggle and unwavering purpose. It is a document that speaks of political acumen, deep piety, and an astonishing, deeply moving personal wish. It reflects the burdens of kingship, the solace of faith, and the enduring power of friendship. The image of the Black Douglas embarking on a perilous journey, carrying the embalmed heart of his king, is one of the most touching and enduring symbols of medieval loyalty and the profound human connections that transcended even death itself. Number 5. The charitable dispositions of Saint Clare of Assisi. The year is 1253. In the convent of San Damiano in Assisi, Italy, the same small, humble structure that Francis of Assisi had famously rebuilt, Saint Clare, its abbess and co-founder of the Poor Clares, lies gravely ill. For 42 years, she has lived a life of radical poverty, prayer and penance within these walls, inspiring countless women to follow her path. Now, at the age of 59, her body, worn by asceticism and illness, is failing. Around her, her beloved sisters, the poor ladies, gather, their hearts heavy with sorrow, knowing their spiritual mother is leaving them. Clare, much like her mentor, Saint Francis, lived a life stripped of worldly possessions. Her will, therefore, is not a document of material bequests, but a spiritual testament, a heartfelt directive to her sisters, a final expression of her unwavering commitment to the Franciscan ideal of absolute poverty. It is known as her testament, or form of life, a deeply personal and touching set of instructions that embody her profound love for God, for Francis, and for her community. She begins by recounting the origins of their order, how the Lord inspired Saint Francis to establish a way of life based on poverty and humility. She recalls how Francis, in his boundless charity, led her and her first sisters to San Damiano, where they embraced a life of rigorous observance. This historical recounting is not just narrative, it is a foundational reminder, rooting her sisters in the very spirit that animated their earliest days. She wants them to remember the direct, personal inspiration from Francis, a connection that binds them all. Clare then explicitly reiterates the core principle of their life, the privilege of poverty. For years, she had fought fiercely, even against papal pressure, to ensure that her sisters would never be forced to own property, either individually or communally. She saw absolute poverty as the ultimate liberation, a complete reliance on divine providence, and a radical witness to the world. Her testament is her final emphatic declaration that this most high poverty must be preserved at all costs. She forbids her sisters from ever possessing any property, real or personal, and insists they live solely on alms. This was her greatest legacy, a unique and challenging path she carved for women religious. She emphasizes the importance of mutual love and service within the community. Claire urges her sisters to serve one another with charity and to bear one another's burdens patiently. She speaks of the importance of living in unity, of being kind and compassionate, and of forgiving one another. This focus on fraternal charity reveals the deep bonds within her community, forged through shared sacrifice and prayer. It is a mother's plea for her children to live in harmony, even after she is gone. Claire also stresses the importance of manual labor, following Francis's example. She instructs her sisters to work diligently and faithfully, but never for profit. Their labor is for sustenance and to avoid idleness, a spiritual discipline that reinforces their commitment to poverty. Let them not fail to work, she dictates, and to apply themselves to work as much as their strength permits. Her testament includes specific instructions regarding the election of the abbess, emphasizing that the chosen leader must be a woman who genuinely loves and upholds the spirit of poverty. She warns against those who might seek to introduce relaxations or compromises, knowing that the rigor of their life would always be under threat from external pressures or internal weakness. This reveals her foresight and her determination to protect the integrity of the order she had helped to establish. Finally, Claire offers a blessing to all her sisters, present and future, who would faithfully observe the form of life she had laid out. She prays for their perseverance, their sanctity, and their eternal salvation. Her blessing is deeply personal, an outpouring of maternal affection and spiritual hope. She calls them my most beloved sisters, a phrase that speaks volumes about the depth of her connection to them. As the last words are written, the quiet sobs of the sisters fill the small room. Claire has given them her final, most precious gift, not wealth, but a reinforced commitment to the radical simplicity that defined their lives. Her testament is a deeply touching document, imbued with her gentle yet resolute spirit. It is a powerful affirmation of her life's purpose, a final cry for the preservation of their unique way of life. It speaks of unwavering faith, profound humility, and a boundless love for her spiritual daughters. In a world obsessed with acquiring and possessing, Claire's final will is a beautiful, radical testament to the liberating power of owning nothing but one's soul and God's grace. Number 4. The Chronicler's Last Chronicle. Jean Froissart. The year is around 1405. In the quiet town of Chimay, in what is now Belgium, the renowned chronicler Jean Froissart, a man who dedicated his life to documenting the chivalric exploits and dramatic events of the 100 Years' War, is nearing his end. He is an old man, perhaps in his late 60s or early 70s, his hands, once agile with a quill, now trembling. He has traveled extensively, resided at many courts, and interviewed countless knights, kings, and commoners, all to capture the stories of his age. Now the greatest story, his own, is drawing to its close. Froissart is known for his detailed, vivid, and often romanticized accounts of battles, tournaments, and courtly life. He moved among the powerful, but his heart was always with the narratives, the human drama of the age. As he approaches his death, he reflects on a life lived in pursuit of history, a life dedicated to preserving the memory of those who lived before him. His will, perhaps dictated to a trusted clerk, is not just a division of earthly goods, but a final testament to his life's passion and his deep connections. His financial situation was often precarious, dependent on patrons, but he had accumulated some possessions worthy of bequest. He would likely begin with the standard provisions for his soul, a common and essential practice in the medieval period. He would bequeath sums of money to the church in Chimay, perhaps for masses to be said for his eternal rest. He would also make donations to the poor of the parish, an act of charity reflecting medieval piety and a desire to gain spiritual merit. This was a man who, despite his fascination with grand events, understood the quiet obligations of faith. Then, his will would turn to his most cherished possessions, his books and his writings. For a chronicler, these were not merely objects, they were the very essence of his being, the fruit of his life's work. He would undoubtedly leave specific instructions regarding the distribution of his numerous volumes, both those he had acquired for his research and, most importantly, the manuscripts of his own monumental chronicles. These were not just copies, they were the handwritten records of his life, filled with marginalia and corrections. He might bequeath copies of his chronicles to various patrons who had supported him throughout his career, perhaps to the Duke of Burgundy, to the Count of Hainaut, or to the English court he had once frequented. These were not just gifts, but symbolic gestures of gratitude and the final claim to his legacy, ensuring his work would continue to be read and valued. He would want his stories to live on. Perhaps most touchingly, he might leave specific instructions regarding his personal notes, his interviews, and his research materials, the raw material from which his grand narratives were woven. He might stipulate that these be preserved perhaps for a future scholar, or bequeathed to a trusted scribe who might continue his work or refine his existing volumes. This would be a chronicler's ultimate act of generosity, passing on the tools of his trade, the very foundation of his life's pursuit. He would also remember his personal household, those who had cared for him in his old age. His servants, his cook, perhaps a loyal secretary who had helped him transcribe his tales, all would receive small sums of money or personal items as a gesture of gratitude. These were the people who witnessed his quiet hours, the struggles of composition, and the triumphs of completion. Their presence in his will speaks to the human connections he forged beyond the grand courts and battlefields. Froissart, a man who relished stories, might even include a small whimsical bequest, a personal item that held sentimental value, perhaps a favorite pen, a worn traveling cloak, or a particular piece of jewelry that had accompanied him on his journeys. Such a detail would reveal the man beneath the public persona of the grand historian, a small, touching glimpse into his personal world. His will would ultimately be a reflection of his life's dedication to narrative and memory. He spent his days recording the deeds of others, ensuring they would not be forgotten. Now in his final act, he seeks to ensure his own legacy, not just through his words, but through the thoughtful distribution of the instruments of his trade and the acknowledgement of those who supported him. As the old chronicler breathes his last, his will serves as a quiet yet profoundly touching final chapter to his extraordinary life. It is a testament to the enduring power of stories, the bonds between author and patron, and the human desire to leave behind something lasting, something that speaks of a life well lived in pursuit of understanding and remembrance. His bequests, particularly those related to his cherished literary work, are a deeply personal farewell from a man who lived to tell the tales of his world. Number 3. The Queen's Gentle Farewells. Philippa of Hainaut. It is August 1369. At Windsor Castle, the beloved Queen Philippa of Hainaut, wife of King Edward III of England, lies gravely ill. For over 40 years, she has been a steadfast presence at the heart of the English court, a queen known for her grace, her charity, and her role as a loving mother to a large family of 12 children. Her husband, King Edward, despite his reputation as a formidable warrior, is utterly devoted to her. As she enters her final hours, the castle is hushed, her children gathered around her, their grief palpable. Philippa has been a queen of profound influence, not through political machinations, but through her gentle wisdom, her deep piety, and her unwavering support for her husband and sons, including the legendary Black Prince. She is particularly remembered for her compassion, famously interceding with Edward III to spare the lives of the burghers of Calais. Now, in her final moments, her will, dictated with clarity and tenderness, reflects the profound humanity that defined her reign. Her will, meticulously recorded, begins with the essential provisions for her soul. She makes generous bequests to Westminster Abbey, her chosen place of burial, ensuring that perpetual masses will be said for her eternal rest. She also donates large sums to various religious houses and hospitals, reflecting her lifelong commitment to charity and care for the poor and the sick. This was not a perfunctory act. Philippa was genuinely known for her almsgiving and her deep personal faith, a constant counterpoint to the often brutal realities of war-torn England. Then her attention turns to her surviving children. By this point, several of her beloved offspring have predeceased her, including her eldest and most celebrated son, Edward, the Black Prince. This loss would have left a deep mark on her heart. To her remaining children, including John of Gaunt and Edmund of Langley, she leaves specific and often deeply personal bequests. These are not just valuable objects. They are items with sentimental value, perhaps pieces of jewelry she cherished, or particular tapestries from her private chambers, each chosen with individual thought and affection. She ensures their financial security. But more importantly, she offers them tangible tokens of her enduring maternal love. Perhaps the most touching aspect of Philippa's will is her attention to her grandchildren. She had many, and her bequests to them speak to a grandmother's tender heart. She leaves them specific jewels, small sums of money, or even particular items of her wardrobe, ensuring they remember her fondly and are provided for. For those who were still young or vulnerable, she might have stipulated guardians or additional provisions, a final act of care from a loving matriarch. She was a queen who understood the importance of family bonds, a source of stability in an unstable world. Her loyal household also receives her generous consideration. Philippa had a large and devoted retinue, many of whom had served her for decades, having come with her from Hainault. Her will names specific ladies-in-waiting, chamberlains, secretaries, and even her personal physicians and chaplains, each receiving a sum of money, a piece of plate, or an item of clothing. These were the people who knew her intimately, who shared her daily life, her joys, and her sorrows. Her generosity to them is a touching testament to the personal bonds she forged, an act of gratitude from a queen who valued loyalty and service. A particularly poignant detail might be her request for her heart to be buried separately, perhaps in her homeland of Hainault, or a specific church in England that held particular significance for her. While not as dramatic as Robert the Bruce's request, such an instruction would symbolize her divided loyalties and her love for both her birthplace and her adopted kingdom. It would be a final, quiet act of sentimentality from a queen who was deeply rooted in both lands. Finally, her will contains instructions for her burial. She desires a dignified, but not overly extravagant funeral, reflecting her own humble spirit. She specifies that she wishes to rest in Westminster Abbey, where her effigy would eventually be carved in alabaster, a lasting tribute to her gentle spirit. As Philippa of Hainault breathes her last, her husband, Edward III, is said to have been inconsolable. Her will is a mirror of her character, a woman of profound piety, immense compassion, and unwavering familial devotion. It is a deeply touching farewell from a queen who was not defined by conquest or political might, but by her gentle strength, her boundless charity, and her enduring love for her family and her people. Her final dispositions are a testament to a life lived with grace and a heart full of compassion, leaving behind a legacy not of power, but of love. Number 2. The Visionary's Final Words. Hildegard von Bingen. The year is 1179. In the convent of Rupertsberg, near Bingen, Germany, the remarkable abbess Hildegard von Bingen, now in her 81st year, is nearing the end of her extraordinary life. She is a figure unlike any other in the Middle Ages. A visionary, a mystic, a composer, a philosopher, a natural healer, and a powerful abbess who corresponded with popes and emperors. Her life has been a tapestry of divine visions, intellectual pursuit, and firm leadership. Now the vibrant mind that conceived vast theological treatises and soaring musical compositions is preparing for its final journey. Hildegard has not just led her community, she has built it, moving her sisters from the confines of Dissebodenberg to the independent, flourishing convent at Rupertsberg. Her life has been one of constant creation and intellectual wrestling, a testament to her profound faith and her unwavering determination. As her death approaches, her will is not a distribution of material goods, for her convent embraces communal poverty. Instead, it is a spiritual and intellectual legacy, a final set of instructions that embody her unique vision and her deep love for her sisters and her work. Her testament, likely dictated and recorded by her loyal scribes and sisters, is a profoundly touching document that encapsulates her life's purpose. It begins with a reaffirmation of her obedience to the Benedictine rule, the foundation of her monastic life. Despite her extraordinary personal experiences and revelations, she always stressed her adherence to the established order of the Church. This was not a concession, but a deep spiritual conviction, grounding her ecstatic visions in the discipline of monastic life. Hildegard then turns to the future of her convent. She emphasizes the importance of maintaining the integrity of their community, upholding the strict observance of the rule, and preserving the unique spiritual charism that defined their lives at Rupertsberg. She had fought fiercely for their independence, and her final instructions would reflect her desire for that independence to endure. She would warn against external interference and internal laxity, urging her sisters to remain united in their purpose and their devotion. A particularly touching aspect of her testament would be her instructions regarding her writings and compositions. These were the fruits of her divine visions and her rigorous intellect, vast bodies of work covering theology, cosmology, medicine, and music. She would likely stipulate that these precious manuscripts be carefully preserved within the convent, perhaps copied and disseminated, ensuring that her spiritual insights and intellectual contributions would continue to inspire future generations. This was not an act of vanity, but a profound desire for God's truth, as revealed to her, to continue to illuminate the world. She would want her symphony of the harmony of celestial revelations to continue to be sung, her scivias to continue to be read. She would also make provisions for the continuation of the medicinal and botanical studies that were a significant part of her life's work. Hildegard had an encyclopedic knowledge of natural remedies, detailed in her works like Physica and Causae et Curae. Her testament might encourage her sisters to continue these studies, to use nature's gifts for healing, and to maintain their herb gardens, ensuring that the practical, compassionate aspect of her legacy also endured. This reflects her holistic approach to life, seeing the divine in all creation. Hildegard, ever a teacher, would include spiritual advice for her sisters. She would urge them to persevere in faith, to cultivate humility, to practice charity towards one another, and to remain steadfast in prayer. She would remind them of the importance of listening to God's voice of cultivating inner peace and of living lives dedicated to truth and beauty. These were the lessons she had imparted throughout her long abbacy, now distilled into final, loving admonitions. Her testament would conclude with a powerful blessing for her community. She would invoke divine grace upon them, praying for their unity, their spiritual growth, and their ultimate salvation. This blessing would be deeply personal, an outpouring of maternal affection from an abbess who had guided her sisters for decades, who had seen them through trials and triumphs, and who considered them her spiritual children. As the venerable Hildegard breathes her last, a deep sense of reverence and sorrow would settle over Rupertsberg. Her will is a testament to an extraordinary life, lived at the intersection of the spiritual and the intellectual. A woman who dared to challenge conventions and whose voice resonated across Europe. It is a deeply touching document, full of profound wisdom, unwavering faith, and an enduring love for her community and the divine truth she sought to express. Her final words are a beacon ensuring that her unique legacy, rooted in both the earth and the heavens, would continue to inspire for centuries to come. Number 1. The scholar's final contemplations. Suger, Abbot of Saint Denis. The year is 1151. In the magnificent Abbey of Saint Denis, just north of Paris, Abbot Suger, one of the most influential figures of his time, lies on his deathbed. He is in his 70th year, a remarkably long life for the 12th century. For over 3 decades, he has served as abbot, advisor, to 2 French kings, Louis VI and Louis VII, and the visionary behind the ground-ring reconstruction of his abbey church. Widely considered the birth of Gothic architecture, his life has been a blend of political acumen, spiritual devotion, and artistic ambition. Now, the man who dreamed in stone and light is facing his end. Suger is known for his pragmatic wisdom, his loyalty to the French monarchy, and his profound belief in the spiritual power of art and beauty. He saw the Abbey of Saint Denis not just as a monastery, but as the spiritual heart of France, the burial place of its kings and a symbol of its divine protection. As he prepares for his death, his will, carefully drafted and imbued with his distinctive vision, reflects his deep love for his abbey, his loyalty to the crown, and his hopes for the future. His will, a meticulous document, naturally begins with extensive provisions for his soul. He makes generous bequests to the Abbey of Saint Denis itself, ensuring that masses will be said for his eternal repose and for the souls of his parents and benefactors. He also provides for the poor of the surrounding villages, a common act of charity. But for Suger, it was also a reflection of his concern for the earthly well-being of those around him. He was a man who, despite his grand projects, understood the simple needs of ordinary people. Then his focus turns to the abbey. The great love of his life, he was a meticulous administrator and a passionate builder. His will would undoubtedly contain specific instructions regarding the ongoing construction of the church, ensuring that his architectural vision, particularly the ground-ring choir and facade, would be completed according to his plans. He might leave specific funds for future improvements, for the acquisition of precious jewels and gold for the reliquaries and liturgical vessels he so cherished, and for the maintenance of the stained glass windows that flooded the space with divine light. This was more than just a will. It was a final artistic directive, a plea for the continuation of his grand spiritual project. Suger had amassed a considerable personal library, filled with theological texts, historical chronicles, and classical works. For a scholar of his standing, these books were invaluable treasures. His will would meticulously list these volumes, bequeathing them to the Abbey Library, ensuring that future generations of monks and scholars would have access to the knowledge he had so carefully collected. This was a profound gift to the intellectual life of the monastery, a testament to his belief in learning and scholarship as avenues to God. He also remembers his loyal monastic brethren and his trusted lay servants who had assisted him in his vast administrative and building projects. He would leave specific bequests to the prior, the cellarer, and other key officials of the abbey, recognizing their dedicated service. His personal servants, the masons, the glassmakers, the artisans who had brought his architectural dreams to life, all would receive small sums of money or practical items as a gesture of his appreciation. This speaks to the personal relationships he forged, the respect he had for the skilled hands that helped realize his vision. Perhaps most touchingly, Suger's will would include provisions for the continued veneration of Saint Denis, the patron saint of France and the abbey. He had tirelessly promoted the cult of Saint Denis, seeing it as a way to strengthen the French monarchy and inspire national unity. His will might stipulate additional prayers or offerings in the saint's honor, a final act of devotion to the figure who was central to his life's mission. Suger's loyalty to the French crown was legendary. His will might include a final word of counsel to the reigning monarch, Louis VII, whom he had guided from childhood. It might be a discreet admonition to continue to cherish and protect Saint Denis, to uphold justice and to maintain peace within the kingdom. This would be a final paternal advice from a seasoned statesman to the young king he had served so faithfully. As Abbot Suger breathes his last in the shadow of his architectural masterpiece, his will is a powerful testament to his life's devotion. It is a document that encapsulates his profound spiritual vision, his practical genius, and his deep, enduring love for the abbey he transformed. His final bequests are not just a distribution of property, but a meticulous blueprint for the continuation of his spiritual and artistic legacy, a deeply touching farewell from a man who believed that beauty could lift the soul to God, and that through art humanity could touch the divine.